The massive space station hung in the darkness like a silver wheel spinning slowly against the stars. Inside the central hub, 47 different alien species gathered in the Grand Council chamber. The room was enormous, with seats arranged in circles that rose up toward the ceiling. Each seat was designed for a different kind of body. Some aliens sat on chairs. Others floated in special containers filled with liquid. A few hung from the ceiling on metal bars. Today was special. For the first time in 3,000 years, a new species had been invited to meet the council. They called themselves humans. They came from a small blue and green planet on the edge of the galaxy, in a region that most species had never bothered to explore. Ambassador Jethral sat in his seat near the center of the room. He was a Corventi, which meant he looked something like a giant cat that walked on two legs. His fur was dark gray, almost black, and his eyes were large and yellow. As the current speaker of the council, it was his job to lead today's meeting. He was not happy about it. Jethral looked down at the electronic tablet in his clawed hands. The information about the humans worried him. These creatures had only discovered how to travel faster than light 200 years ago. That was incredibly fast. Most species took 1,000 years or more to develop that technology. The humans had done it in less than 2 centuries after they first learned to fly in space. But that was not the worst part. The worst part was their history. Jethral had spent weeks reading about human civilization. Their planet had been divided into hundreds of different groups, and these groups had fought each other constantly. The wars were terrible. Millions of humans had died in their conflicts. They had invented weapons that could destroy entire cities in seconds. They had created diseases to use against each other. They had burned forests and poisoned rivers just to hurt their enemies. Even the Corventi, who were known as fierce warriors, found human warfare disturbing. Humans seemed to have no limits when they fought. They would sacrifice anything to win. They would fight for years, even decades, without giving up. They were persistent and creative and absolutely ruthless when they believed they were right. A soft chime sounded in the chamber. The human shuttle was approaching. Jethral felt his tail twitch with nervousness. He looked over at Commander Vexnar, who was in charge of station security. Vexnar was a Corventi like himself, but younger and more aggressive. The commander stood near the entrance, watching several floating screens that showed information from the security scanners. Suddenly, Vexnar's ears went flat against his head. This was a sign of confusion among the Corventi. He tapped at his screens, checking the information again and again. "Speaker Jethral," Vexnar called out, his voice uncertain. "The scans of the human shuttle are complete." "There is something strange. What is it?" Jethral asked, though he felt he already knew the answer would not be good. "The shuttle carries no weapons," Vexnar said slowly. "No plasma cannons, no missile launchers, no particle beams, nothing. For a species with such a violent history, this makes no sense." Murmurs spread through the council chamber. Other species had heard this news through their own communication devices. Everyone knew about the human reputation for warfare. An unarmed ship seemed impossible. It had to be a trick. "Perhaps they hide their weapons," Vexnar suggested. "Maybe they have technology we cannot detect. No species comes to the council without protection." "It would be foolish," Jethral nodded slowly. That made sense. The humans must have some kind of hidden defense system. They were clever. Their technology was advanced. They would not really come here completely defenseless. That would be insane. The large doors at the entrance to the chamber slowly opened. 3 humans walked through. They moved with calm confidence, looking around the room with obvious interest but no fear. This surprised Jethral. Most new species were nervous when they first entered the council chamber. They were surrounded by aliens far from home, in a place where they had no friends or allies. But these humans seemed relaxed, almost comfortable. The human in front was male, according to the information Jethral had read. His name was Richard Hayes, and he was their ambassador. He looked to be middle-aged, with hair that was starting to turn gray. His eyes were blue and calm. He wore a simple dark suit with a colorful strip of cloth around his neck, that humans called a tie. He carried nothing in his hands. Behind him walked a human female named Claire Bennett. She was younger than the ambassador, with short brown hair and sharp green eyes. The information said she was a military liaison, someone who represented the human armed forces. She wore a similar dark suit, though without the tie. Her posture was very straight and her movements were precise. She also carried nothing, The third human was another male, Dr. Peter Morrison. He was tall and thin, with glasses covering his eyes. He was their chief science officer. He carried a small electronic tablet, but otherwise his hands were empty. Vexnar immediately ordered his security team to scan the humans themselves. The scanners hummed and clicked, examining the three visitors from every angle. The results came back quickly. Jathril read them on his tablet and felt his blood run cold. No weapons, no energy shields, no armor under their clothing, no hidden blades, no chemical weapons, no biological agents, no explosives, nothing. The humans were, by every measure that technology could provide, completely and totally unarmed. This was unprecedented. Every species that came to the council brought weapons or guards or both. The Corventhi never traveled without their plasma pistols. The Valorians wore personal shield generators at all times. Even the peaceful Lumina, who hated violence, had defensive systems built into their crystalline bodies. Protection was common sense. The galaxy was dangerous. Treaties could fail. Accidents could happen. Only a fool would go into unknown territory without any way to defend themselves. Yet here stood three humans, creatures from one of the most violent species ever discovered, and they carried nothing. They wore simple clothes and calm expressions. They looked around the chamber like tourists visiting a museum, interested and polite but not concerned. Jathril leaned toward his aide, a younger Corventhi named Felkan. "This must be some kind of test," he whispered. "Or perhaps a trap. No one is this foolish." Felkan's ears twitched. "Should we increase security? Perhaps they plan something we do not understand." "Yes," Jathril decided. "Double the guards. Keep the scanners active. Watch them constantly. And send a message to all council members. Tell them to be cautious. The humans are either very stupid or very dangerous, and I do not think they are stupid." Ambassador Richard Hayes reached the center of the chamber. He stopped at the designated spot and looked up at the assembled council. Then he smiled. It was a warm, friendly smile. He placed his hand over his chest, and what the information said was a human gesture of respect. "Honored members of the Galactic Council," he said in clear, perfect council standard language. "My name is Richard Hayes. On behalf of the people of Earth and the Human Federation, I thank you for this opportunity to address you today. We come in peace, seeking friendship and cooperation with all species of the galaxy." The words were appropriate and polite, but Jathril barely heard them. He was too busy trying to understand what kind of game the humans were playing. They came unarmed, smiling, talking about peace. But their history screamed of war and violence and death. Something did not add up. And in Jathril's long experience as a diplomat, when something did not add up, it usually meant someone was lying. He just needed to figure out what the lie was before it was too late. The presentation began exactly as planned. Ambassador Richard Hayes stood in the center of the Grand Council chamber and spoke about his species and their world. His voice was clear and confident. He did not seem nervous or afraid, even though he was surrounded by aliens who could easily kill him if they chose to. Richard talked about Earth, the human homeworld. He described its blue oceans and green forests, its tall mountains and wide deserts. He explained how humans had slowly spread across their planet, building cities and farms, creating art and music and literature. He spoke about human science and technology, about their discoveries in medicine and engineering and physics. He talked about human culture. He explained that Earth had many different groups of humans, each with their own languages and traditions and beliefs. He said that humans had learned to value this diversity, to see it as a strength rather than a weakness. He spoke about how humans had eventually united their world under a single peaceful government, ending the wars that had plagued them for so long. The presentation was good. Richard Hayes was clearly an experienced diplomat. He knew how to speak to an audience. He knew when to pause, when to emphasize important points, when to use humor to make people relax. Under normal circumstances, the council members would have been impressed, but these were not normal circumstances. The council members were distracted. They whispered to each other through their various communication devices. They shifted in their seats. They kept glancing at the three unarmed humans standing calmly in the center of the chamber. The question burned in everyone's mind. Why did they come without weapons? What were they trying to prove? What was their plan? Finally, someone could not contain himself any longer. Counselor Draxum of the Valorian Collective stood up from his seat. He was a large reptilian creature, covered in green and blue scales. A ridge of sharp spines ran down his back and his crest was flaring with agitation. When a Valorian's crest flared like that, it meant they were either angry or very confused. "Ambassador Hayes," Draxum said, his voice loud and harsh. "I must interrupt. There is a question that cannot wait." Richard Hayes stopped speaking. He turned to face Draxum and nodded politely. "Of course, Counselor. Please ask your question." Draxum's claws tapped against his chair as he spoke. "We have reviewed your species' history very carefully. Your world has known almost continuous warfare for thousands of years. Your people have fought each other with terrible weapons. You have killed millions of your own kind in these conflicts. Your military technology is remarkably advanced for such a young species. Yet you come before us today without weapons, without guards, without even basic personal defense systems. Explain this contradiction. Why do you pretend to be peaceful when your history proves you are not?" The chamber fell silent. Every species wanted to hear the answer to this question. Jethro leaned forward in his seat, his yellow eyes fixed on the human ambassador. This was the moment of truth. Now they would see what game the humans were really playing. Richard Hayes looked at Draxum for a long moment. Then he smiled slightly. It was a small, almost sad smile. "Counselor, we come unarmed because we come in peace. Is that not the purpose of diplomacy? To talk rather than fight? To seek understanding rather than conflict?" Another council member stood up. This was Counselor Mersha of the Aquilian Unity. She was a bird-like creature with brilliant purple and gold feathers. Her species was known for being direct and honest, sometimes brutally so. "Do not insult our intelligence, Ambassador," Mersha said sharply, her feathers ruffling with irritation. "Every species in this chamber arms their diplomats. Every single one. The Council itself maintains a large defense fleet to protect this station. Peace is not maintained by weakness. Peace is maintained by strength. Everyone knows this. So why do humans pretend otherwise? What are you really planning?" Richard Hayes opened his mouth to respond, but before he could speak, Claire Bennett stepped forward. The human military liaison had been standing quietly behind the ambassador, but now she moved to stand beside him. Her green eyes looked directly at Mersha. "We are not pretending anything, Counselor," Claire said calmly. "We simply understand something that perhaps others do not." Jethro found himself speaking before he realized it. "And what is that?" he asked, leaning forward with genuine curiosity. "What do you understand that we do not?" Claire Bennett turned to look at him. Her face was serious but not hostile. "That sometimes, Speaker Jethro, the most dangerous thing in the room is the one that does not need a weapon." The words hung in the air like smoke. Nobody moved. Nobody spoke. The chamber was completely silent as the meaning of what Claire had said slowly sank in. She was not making a threat, or maybe she was. It was hard to tell. Her voice had been quiet and calm, but the implication behind her words was clear. The humans did not need weapons because they themselves were the weapons. Several council members shifted uncomfortably in their seats. Jethro felt his tail twitch again. The human female had just told the entire Galactic Council that she and her companions were dangerous enough without weapons. That was either incredibly brave or incredibly foolish, or perhaps it was just the truth. Draxum's crest flared even higher. "Are you threatening us?" he demanded. "Do you dare come to our council and make threats?" "No," Richard Hayes said quickly, raising one hand in a calming gesture. "Please, Counselor Draxum, you misunderstand. We are not threatening anyone. My colleague is simply trying to explain our philosophy. We humans have learned some difficult lessons through our history. One of those lessons is that carrying weapons often makes conflict more likely, not less likely." "That makes no sense," Mersha said, though her feathers had settled down slightly. "Weapons provide protection. They deter aggression. How can they cause conflict?" Dr. Peter Morrison stepped forward now, adjusting his glasses as he spoke. "Think of it this way, Counselor. When two people meet and both are armed, what happens? They watch each other carefully. They look for signs of hostility. They keep their hands near their weapons. They are ready to defend themselves. And because they are ready to defend themselves, they are also ready to attack if they think the other person might attack first. The presence of weapons creates a tension that can easily spiral into violence. But when two people meet and neither is armed," Richard Hayes continued, "there is no such tension. There is no fear of sudden attack. There is no need to watch for weapons being drawn. Both parties can focus on talking, on understanding each other, on finding common ground. Communication becomes easier. Trust becomes possible. Jethro considered this. It was an interesting argument, perhaps even a convincing argument. But it did not explain everything. Ambassador Hayes, he said slowly, what you say has some logic. But you forget something important. You say that being unarmed removes tension, yet everyone in this chamber is tense right now precisely because you are unarmed. We find your lack of weapons suspicious. We wonder what tricks you are hiding. We worry about what you are planning. So in fact, your strategy has created more tension, not less. Richard Hayes smiled again, and this time the smile was wider, almost amused. You are absolutely correct, Speaker Jethro. You have identified exactly the problem we face. We are trying something new, something that goes against what everyone expects. And because it is unexpected, it creates suspicion and confusion. We knew this would happen. We knew that many species would not understand our choice, at least not at first. Then why do it? Draxum asked. Why make things difficult for yourselves? Claire Bennett answered. Because we are trying to prove something. We are trying to show that we can be trusted. We are trying to demonstrate that humans can control their violent impulses. We come from a species that has fought terrible wars, yes. We have done horrible things to each other, yes. But we have also learned from those mistakes. We have changed. We have grown. And we want the galaxy to see that change is possible. Dr. Morrison added, if we had come here armed like everyone else, what message would that send? It would say that humans are just another warrior species, no different from dozens of others. It would say that we have not really changed at all. We want to send a different message. We want to say that humans are capable of choosing peace even when war would be easier. The chamber was quiet again. The council members looked at each other, uncertain. The human argument was compelling. But was it true? Or was this just clever manipulation? The humans were clearly intelligent. They knew how to use words. They knew how to present themselves in the best possible light. But did their actions match their words? Jethro made a decision. Ambassador Hayes, the council will need time to discuss this matter. We will adjourn for today. You and your delegation will be given quarters here on the station. Tomorrow we will continue our discussions. Is this acceptable? Perfectly acceptable, Speaker Jethro, Richard Hayes said with a slight bow. We thank the council for their time and patience. As the three humans were escorted out of the chamber, Jethro watched them carefully. They walked with the same calm confidence they had shown when they entered. They did not seem worried or afraid. They did not look back over their shoulders. The next few days were strange for everyone on the council station. The human delegation moved through the corridors and meeting rooms like they belonged there. They attended security briefings with military officers from a dozen different species. They participated in trade negotiations about resources and technology. They joined cultural exchange meetings where different civilizations shared their art and music and stories. And through it all, they remained completely unarmed. They wore their simple suits and smiled their friendly smiles. They asked questions and listened carefully to answers. They seemed genuinely interested in learning about the other species. They never showed fear, never acted suspicious, never looked over their shoulders. This behavior made the other species increasingly uncomfortable. The Corventhi warriors kept their distance, hands always near their plasma pistols. The Valorians activated their personal shields whenever the humans came close. Even the peaceful Lumina seemed uncertain about how to interact with these strange creatures who broke all the normal rules of galactic society. Commander Vexnar increased security patrols. He assigned extra guards to follow the humans wherever they went. He monitored their communications, though the humans had told him all their passwords and security codes freely. He searched their quarters every day while they were gone. He found nothing. No hidden weapons, no secret devices, no signs of any plan or conspiracy. Just clothes and personal items and books. So many books. The humans loved to read. The incident happened on the fourth day. A trade negotiation had gone badly. The Corventhi Empire and the Valorian Collective were arguing about mining rights to an asteroid field. Both sides claimed the field was in their territory. Both sides had brought maps and charts and legal documents. Both sides were absolutely certain they were right. The argument grew louder and angrier. The Corventhi trade minister, a large male named Corvex, slammed his fist on the table. His claws left scratches in the metal surface. The Valorian representative, a female named Valisa, hissed and raised her crest. Her spines rattled together in a threatening display. Within seconds, both sides had drawn weapons. Corvex held a plasma pistol in one hand. Felisa activated her energy staff. Other delegates in the room scrambled to get out of the way. Some dove under tables. Others ran for the exits. The human delegation was sitting near the corner of the room, watching everything with calm interest. Then Richard Hayes stood up. He did not run. He did not hide. He simply stood up from his chair and walked toward the center of the room, directly toward the two armed aliens who looked ready to kill each other. Claire Bennett and Peter Morrison remained seated, watching their ambassador with expressions of complete trust. Richard walked calmly until he was standing between Corvex and Val-Isa. He was within arm's reach of both weapons. One shot from either side would kill him instantly. He raised his empty hands, palms out, in a gesture of peace. "Gentlemen," he said quietly, "this seems counterproductive." Corvex stared at the human with his yellow eyes wide. "Step aside, human," he growled. "This does not concern your species. This is between the Corventhi and the Valorians." "Actually, it concerns everyone in this room," Richard said, still in that same calm, reasonable tone. "Because if you start shooting, you will not stop with each other. Stray shots will hit other people. They might hit the walls. They might damage the station's hull. And then we will all have a much bigger problem than who owns an asteroid field." Valisa's crest was still raised high. "Are you threatening us, human? Are you saying we should fear you?" "No," Richard said with a slight smile. "I am reminding you that you are threatening yourselves. I do not need to do anything. You are already in danger from your own weapons and your own anger. I am just pointing that out." The simple logic of his words seemed to break through the anger. Corvex looked at his plasma pistol, then at the other delegates hiding under tables, then at the walls of the station around them. Valisa followed his gaze. They both slowly realized what Richard was saying. If they fought here, they would endanger everyone, including themselves. But more than that, something about Richard's complete lack of fear made them pause. This unarmed human was standing between loaded weapons, and he seemed completely unconcerned. He was not sweating. His hands were not shaking. His voice was steady. He looked like someone discussing the weather, not someone standing in the middle of a potential firefight. Slowly, very slowly, Corvex lowered his plasma pistol. Valisa deactivated her energy staff. The weapons disappeared back into their holsters. The two aliens stared at each other for a moment, then looked away, embarrassed. "Perhaps we should take a break," Richard suggested gently. "Let everyone calm down. We can continue these negotiations tomorrow when tempers have cooled. Does that seem reasonable?" Both Corvex and Valisa nodded. They left the room quickly, avoiding each other's eyes. The other delegates slowly emerged from their hiding places, talking in whispers. They all looked at Richard Hayes with new expressions. Not fear exactly, but a kind of wary respect. That evening, a small group of younger diplomats approached Dr. Peter Morrison in one of the station's recreation areas. They were curious. They had questions. How did Ambassador Hayes remain so calm? Was he not afraid of being shot? Did all humans have such control over their emotions? Peter smiled and gestured for them to sit down. He seemed happy to talk. Ambassador Hayes was afraid, he explained. Of course he was afraid. Any sensible person would be afraid when standing between two loaded weapons. But he did not let that fear control him. He controlled the fear instead. But how? Asked a young Lumina diplomat, her crystalline body shimmering with confusion. How does one control fear? Practice, Peter said simply. And understanding. You see, we humans learned something important in our history. We learned that the person who escalates to violence first is usually the most afraid. They are afraid of losing. They are afraid of being hurt. They are afraid of looking weak. So they try to take control of the situation by using force. He leaned back in his chair. But the person who stays calm, who does not escalate, that person actually has the most control. Because they are not reacting out of fear. They are acting based on reason and strategy. They can see the situation clearly. They can find solutions that the angry person cannot see. A young Corventhi warrior named Telvik spoke up. His voice was uncertain. My people teach that strength comes from being ready to fight. That a warrior must always be prepared for battle. Are you saying this is wrong? Not wrong, Peter said carefully. Just incomplete. Being prepared to fight is important. Knowing how to defend yourself is important. But the strongest warrior is not the one who fights the most. The strongest warrior is the one who knows when not to fight. The one who can walk away from a battle they do not need to win. The one who can stand unarmed in a dangerous situation because they understand that sometimes being unarmed is the safest choice. The young diplomats looked at each other. These ideas were strange to them. They challenged everything they had been taught about safety and strength and power. But they could not deny what they had seen. Richard Hayes had stopped a fight without using any force at all. He had done it with just words and calmness and logic. "Will you teach us?" the Lumina diplomat asked. "Will you show us how humans think about these things?" Peter smiled. "I would be honored. But remember, this is not just about copying what humans do. Every species is different. You need to find your own path. What works for humans might not work for Corventhi or Valorians or Lumina. The important thing is to think about it, to question your assumptions, to ask yourself why you do things the way you do them." As the young diplomats left, Peter sat alone for a moment, looking out at the stars through the station's viewing window. He thought about Earth and all the mistakes humans had made, all the wars they had fought, all the people who had died before humans finally learned these lessons. He hoped the galaxy could learn faster than humanity had. He hoped they would not need to make the same terrible mistakes. But he knew that learning these lessons was never easy. It required courage, it required wisdom, and most of all, it required the willingness to change. The question was whether the Galactic Council was ready for that change. Time would tell. On the 7th day of the human visit, Speaker Jathril made an unusual request. He asked Ambassador Richard Hayes to join him for a private dinner. No assistants, no guards, no recording devices. Just the two of them, sharing a meal and talking honestly. Richard agreed immediately. They met in one of the station's private dining rooms. It was a small, comfortable space with a table that could adjust to suit different species. The lighting was soft and warm. Through the window, the stars moved slowly past as the station continued its eternal rotation. Jathril had ordered food that both species could eat. There were various vegetables and fruits prepared in different styles. There was meat for Jathril, who was a carnivore, and grain dishes for Richard, who seemed to eat almost anything. They filled their plates and began to eat in silence for a few minutes. Finally, Jathril spoke. "Your species fascinates me, Ambassador, and I must be honest, it also troubles me. I have spent many hours reading your historical records. The things your people have done to each other are terrible. The scale of your wars is beyond what most species can imagine. The weapons you have created could destroy entire worlds." He paused, taking a drink of water. "Yet here you sit across from me with nothing but words and confidence. You walk through a station full of armed strangers without fear. You step between weapons without hesitation. I do not understand. I have been trying to understand for 7 days now, and I still do not. So I ask you, please, may I be completely honest with you? Will you be completely honest with me?" Richard set down his utensils and looked directly at the Corventhi leader. His blue eyes were serious. "I would welcome honesty, Speaker Jathril. Please ask me whatever you wish." "Why do you really come unarmed?" Jathril asked. Not the political answer, not the diplomatic speech. The real reason. What are you trying to prove? What game are you playing? Richard was quiet for a moment, thinking. Then he spoke slowly, choosing his words carefully. "We do not carry weapons to diplomatic meetings because we learned something important about ourselves. We learned that in any room, at any negotiation, with any species, humans are already the most dangerous thing present. And we decided that was something we needed to acknowledge and control, not display." Jathril's ears went flat against his head. This was not the answer he had expected. "Explain what you mean." Richard leaned back in his chair. "Every species in the galaxy evolved in a particular way, correct? You Corventhi are ambush hunters. You are fast and strong, but you tire quickly. You prefer to strike suddenly and overwhelm your prey before they can react. The Valorians evolved as herd animals. They developed pack tactics and defensive formations. The Lumina are filter feeders who never hunted anything. Each species has their niche, their particular way of surviving." "And humans?" Jathril asked, though he felt he already knew the answer would disturb him. "Humans are persistence hunters and adaptable omnivores," Richard said. "Do you know what that means?" It means we evolved to chase our prey for hours, sometimes days, until the animal literally collapsed from exhaustion. We are not the fastest runners in the galaxy. We are not the strongest. But we never give up. We just keep coming, hour after hour, until our target has no strength left to escape. He continued. We also developed the ability to throw objects with deadly accuracy. No other Earth species can do this as well as humans can. We created tools for every environment. We learned to live in deserts and jungles and frozen wastelands. We learned to eat almost anything. We learned to work together in flexible groups that could change their strategy based on the situation. Richard's expression grew more serious. But here is what really makes humans dangerous, Speaker Jethral. We are one of the very few species that practices both individual and group violence as social tools. We have concepts like martial arts, where people train their entire lives to fight without weapons. We have combat sports where violence is entertainment. We have military academies where we study warfare like it is a science. We have names for dozens of different kinds of war, he went on. Guerrilla warfare, psychological warfare, economic warfare, cultural warfare, information warfare. We have studied violence so thoroughly that we have categorized and systematized every aspect of it. We know exactly how to hurt others in every possible way. And worse, we are very, very good at it. Jethral felt a chill run through his body. His tail curled around his feet, an unconscious defensive gesture. This does not comfort me, Ambassador. You are describing a species that sounds like a nightmare. You should not be comforted, Richard agreed, because I am telling you the truth. Claire Bennett, our military liaison, has trained for 20 years in various forms of hand-to-hand combat. If she wanted to kill everyone in this room right now, she could probably do it with her bare hands before your security team could arrive to stop her. Not because she has weapons, because she is a weapon. If I wanted to destroy this station, Richard continued, I could probably find 6 different ways to do it using only materials that are already here. I could sabotage the life support systems. I could cause a reactor overload. I could create a cascade failure in the structural supports. I have been trained to think this way, to see vulnerabilities, to plan attacks. It is part of what makes a good military strategist. He leaned forward. And if humanity wanted to conquer the galaxy, we have already identified 43 different strategic approaches we could take. We have studied your military capabilities. We have analyzed your economic systems. We have looked at your political structures. We know where the weaknesses are. We know how to exploit them. Because that is what humans do. We study, we plan, we prepare. Jethral's claws had extended without him realizing it. His body was reacting to a threat even though Richard had not moved, had not raised his voice, had not made any aggressive gesture. Then why do you tell me these things? He asked quietly. Why reveal your capabilities? Because we do not want to use them, Richard said simply. That is the whole point, Speaker Jethral. That is what we are trying to tell the galaxy. Yes, humans are dangerous. Yes, we are capable of terrible violence. Yes, we could probably conquer you if we really tried. But we do not want to. That is our choice. That is what we have decided. He spread his hands. We learned, through thousands of years of warfare, that being capable of violence and choosing violence are two completely different things. We learned that the strongest person is not the one who fights the most battles. The strongest person is the one who does not need to fight at all. We come unarmed to prove that we have made a choice, Richard said. We are here to talk, to trade, to share knowledge, to learn from other species, to build friendships. We leave our weapons behind because bringing them would suggest we have not really decided what we want. It would suggest we are still thinking about violence as an option, but we are not. We have moved beyond that. Jethral was silent for a long moment. His mind was racing. Everything Richard said made sense, but it also raised new questions. And if someone attacks you? He finally asked. What if a species decides to test your peaceful intentions? What if they hurt humans, kill humans because they believe you are weak? Richard's smile was not entirely friendly. It was the smile of someone who knew a secret. Then they will learn why we do not need weapons, Speaker Jethral, and why we really, really hope nobody ever forces us to demonstrate that lesson. Because once we do, once we show the galaxy what humans are truly capable of when we stop holding back. Everything will change. The trust we are trying to build will be gone. The peaceful future we want will be much harder to achieve. He paused. So we hope that nobody is foolish enough to test us. We hope that other species will see our restraint and respect it. We hope that by choosing peace, we inspire others to choose peace as well. But if we are wrong, if someone does force us to defend ourselves, then yes, they will learn. And they will regret it. Jethro looked at the human sitting across from him. Richard Hayes looked like such an ordinary person. Middle-aged, slightly tired, wearing simple clothes. He could have been anyone. He could have been harmless. But now Jethro understood the truth. This ordinary-looking human was not harmless at all. None of them were. They were apex predators pretending to be house pets, and they were very good at pretending. But they were also telling the truth. They were not hiding their nature. They were openly admitting what they were, what they could do. They were giving the galaxy a choice. Trust us and build a peaceful future together, or fear us and create the very conflict everyone wants to avoid. It was, Jethro realized, a very clever strategy. By being honest about their capabilities, the humans had made it almost impossible to attack them. Because now everyone would wonder, was this human really unarmed? Or was the human themselves the weapon? And by the time you figured out the answer, it would probably be too late. Thank you for your honesty, Ambassador Hayes, Jethro said finally. You have given me much to think about. And thank you for listening, Speaker Jethro, Richard replied. I know this is not easy to hear, but it is the truth. And we believe that truth is the foundation of trust. We want the galaxy to know who we really are, not who we pretend to be. They finished their meal in thoughtful silence. The news of Speaker Jethral's conversation with Ambassador Hayes spread through the council like electricity through water. Within hours, every species knew what the human had said. The revelation caused chaos. Emergency meetings were called at all hours. Security assessments were conducted and reconsidered. Military advisors were brought in to analyze the threat. Diplomats argued in the hallways and over communication channels. Some species were horrified by what they learned. The humans had openly admitted they could destroy the council if they wanted to. They had confessed to being dangerous predators who studied violence as a science. They had revealed capabilities that made even the most warlike species uncomfortable. How could the council possibly trust such creatures? How could they allow them to join galactic civilization? Other species were skeptical. The humans were exaggerating, they said. No species could really be that dangerous. It was all just talk, just intimidation tactics. The humans were trying to frighten the council into accepting them. It was a bluff, nothing more. But many species were simply deeply unsettled. They had spent days watching the humans move through the station. They had seen the calm confidence, the lack of fear, the absolute certainty in every action. They had watched Richard Hayes step between weapons without hesitation. They had heard Dr. Peter Morrison explain human philosophy with patient intelligence. They had observed Claire Bennett, who moved like a dancer but had the eyes of a warrior. And now they understood what they had been watching. They had been looking at apex predators who had chosen to be peaceful, but who had not forgotten how to hunt. The human delegation was placed under increased surveillance, not because anyone thought they were planning an attack, but because everyone wanted to understand them better. Guards followed them everywhere, but the humans did not seem to mind. Security cameras recorded their every movement, and the humans smiled and waved at the cameras. Their communications were monitored, and the humans continued to send friendly messages home to Earth, describing the wonders of the council station and the interesting species they were meeting. But something strange happened during this period of suspicion and surveillance. The humans did not change their behavior at all. They continued to be helpful, friendly, and genuinely interested in other species. They did not act like dangerous predators. They acted like eager students who wanted to learn everything they could about galactic civilization. When a minor crisis erupted with a malfunctioning reactor in one of the station's power systems, it was Dr. Peter Morrison who solved the problem. He worked for 16 hours straight alongside the Lumina engineers, his hands deep in circuits and power conduits, until the system was running smoothly again. He never complained about the long hours. He never asked for special treatment. He just worked until the job was done. When a diplomatic deadlock threatened to derail a peace treaty between two minor species, it was Richard Hayes who mediated the dispute. He listened patiently to both sides for hours, asking questions, offering suggestions, helping them see each other's perspectives. He never took sides. He never got frustrated. He just kept working until both parties found common ground. The treaty was signed 3 days later. When a young Lumina diplomat fell ill with a mysterious ailment that the station's doctors could not identify, it was Claire Bennett who suggested they compare Lumina biology with human biology. She volunteered to give blood samples for analysis. The doctors discovered an unexpected similarity between human and Lumina biochemistry. This led them to a treatment that saved the young diplomat's life. Claire visited the recovering Lumina every day, bringing small gifts and telling stories to keep her spirits up. Slowly, gradually, the council began to understand something important. The humans were not pretending to be peaceful. They really were choosing peace. Every single day, in 100 small ways, they demonstrated that their words matched their actions. Yes, they were dangerous. Yes, they could hurt people if they wanted to. But they did not want to. They wanted to help. They wanted to contribute. They wanted to be part of something bigger than themselves. The humans were not unarmed because they were weak. They were unarmed because they were strong enough to not need weapons, and wise enough to know that displaying their strength would make others afraid. They had learned from their mistakes. They had grown beyond their violent past, and they were offering the galaxy a chance to see that change was possible. After 2 weeks of debate and discussion, the final council session was called. Every species sent their representatives. The chamber was full. The air was thick with tension and anticipation. This was the moment of decision. Would humanity be accepted into the Galactic Council, or would they be sent home? Speaker Jethro stood at his podium and looked out at the assembled delegates. "We have debated the human application for membership for many cycles now," he said. "We have heard arguments from all sides. Some say that humans are too dangerous to trust. Others say they are too deceptive, that they hide their true nature. Still others say we should not judge them by their past but by their present actions." He paused, his yellow eyes sweeping across the room. "I propose a different view. I believe the humans are dangerous, perhaps more dangerous than any species we have ever encountered. But I also believe they are honest about that danger. They have not tried to hide what they are. They have openly told us about their capabilities, their history, their potential for violence. They have given us every opportunity to see them clearly." Jethro gestured toward the human delegation, who stood calmly in the center of the chamber. "They come unarmed not to hide their nature, but to demonstrate their control over it. They offer us a choice. We can fear what they could do, or we can trust what they choose to do. We can focus on their capacity for violence, or we can focus on their commitment to peace. We can reject them because of their past, or we can accept them because of their future." Councillor Draxum stood up, his crest raised. "And if we choose wrong, Speaker Jethro?" "If we accept them and they betray us, what then?" Before Jethro could answer, Claire Bennett spoke. It was the first time she had addressed the full council in a formal session. Her voice was clear and strong. "Then you will have been betrayed by a species that gave you every chance to see them coming. We are not hiding what we are, Counselor. We are showing you what we want to be. If we betray your trust, you will have no one to blame but yourselves for not believing what we told you from the very beginning." She paused, looking around the chamber. "But we will not betray you, because we meant what we said. We are here to learn, to grow, to become part of something greater than ourselves. We are here to prove that even the most violent species can change. We are here to build a better future together with all of you." The chamber was silent. Then Jethro spoke again. "The council will now vote on the human application for membership. Those in favor, please indicate your approval." The voting process took nearly an hour. It was the closest vote in council history. When the final count was announced, 26 species had voted in favor of accepting humanity. 19 had voted against. 2 had abstained, unable to decide. By the rules of the council, a simple majority was enough. Humanity had been accepted, but the acceptance came with conditions. The membership was provisional, subject to review in 10 standard cycles. During that time, human actions would be carefully watched. If they proved themselves worthy of trust, full membership would be granted. If they did not, the membership would be revoked and humanity would be expelled from the council. Richard Hayes bowed deeply. On behalf of all humanity, I thank the Council for this opportunity. We will not fail you. We will prove that your trust was not misplaced. As the session ended and delegates began to leave, something unexpected happened. Young diplomats from various species approached the humans with questions. They wanted to know more. How did humans stay so calm under pressure? How did they develop such control over their emotions? How could others learn to negotiate without weapons? Could the humans teach these skills to other species? Richard gathered the young diplomats around him. He smiled warmly at their eager faces, so different from each other, yet all showing the same curiosity. I can teach you what we have learned, he said. But first, you must ask yourselves an important question. What are you really afraid of? The person across the negotiating table or your own uncertainty about how to handle the situation? He continued. Most conflicts come from fear. Fear of losing, fear of being hurt, fear of looking weak. When you carry a weapon, you are saying that you are afraid. You are saying that you do not trust the other person. And when they see your weapon, they become afraid too. Fear breeds more fear. Weapons breed more weapons. Violence breeds more violence. But when you come unarmed, Richard explained, you are saying something different. You are saying that you trust yourself to handle the situation without violence. You are saying that you believe words can solve problems better than weapons. You are saying that you are strong enough to be vulnerable, and when others see that strength, that confidence, they often respond with trust instead of fear. The young diplomats listened carefully, asking more questions, discussing these ideas among themselves.